You're listening to Career Interrupted. I'm your host, Joy Foster. I'm excited to be interviewing Lillie Jamieson, who's the co-founder of Send It to Alex. It's an employment service support for neuro-minority individuals to help them overcome barriers at work. Welcome, Lillie. It's so great to have you here. We're going to start by diving straight into your career interruptions. Now, it's a little bit of a unique situation because you have a sister who had a career interruption, which inspired you to launch Send It to Alex, hence where the name Alex came from. But also you've had some career interruptions yourself. Let's talk about yours first, and then we'll dive into Alex's career interruptions and the big one that launched your business. So over to you, Lillie. Tell us about your career interruptions.
Thank you for having me, first of all. So my first career interruption was when I was as early as 19. And in hindsight, I've recognized it as a career interruption. At the time, I'd had enough of everybody and my job, and the best thing that I could have done at that point in time was to go traveling. But on reflecting on that period of time of traveling, I had a period of significant indifference. So I was seeing these wild, wonderful new places in the world, having these incredible experiences, and not thinking very much of them, and just being like, oh, what's the hype? Which later on, towards the end of my journey, I had there was a shift in how I was experiencing things. Also, while I was on that journey, I felt very much like I didn't want to go back to work. I didn't understand how I was going to fit into the workplace. And yeah, just had I'm quite an ambition person. I've got a lot of drive. I work very hard. And I did within that role, and I just got to the point where I couldn't deal with the idea of that being my future, that I was going to be in there, but couldn't also see outside of where I might fit. So for me, the easiest thing to do was to go traveling, because that was on trend and that was okay to do, and I could go and do nothing and kind of work through that. And then it wasn't until 27 where I found myself traveling again, having a similar experience of not being disinterested, having wild experiences and not really responding to them. And again, came out of working incredibly hard, running my responsibilities, trying to do not having a balance. So just working incredibly hard, trying to make time for social arrangements as well, or keeping in their social arrangements. I often had two jobs growing up before my 30s. And I got to the point where I couldn't see a future in the role, couldn't see myself elsewhere, and indifferent. Those are the two where I've kind of left not knowing and not wanting to know what's next.
And it's interesting because when we were talking before, you sort of described that indifference and that feeling as actually burnout, but you didn't recognize it at the time, but you recognize it looking back, that actually at a very young age, at 18, 19, you burnt yourself out. And then again, at 27, you burnt out again, and you didn't recognize it as burnout at the time, but you can see that looking back. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize, that and the signs of burnout, right? Where you lose interest in things, you've got that indifference. Those are really important. Now, you have a sister who was on an HR track and working her way up the HR ladder within organizations, and then she had a career interruption. Tell us about that and how it inspired your company.
Sure. So Alex and I had always said that we were going to start a business together. But as time went on, and being mothers, following different career paths, I think it felt like it was becoming less likely. But we would have those conversations. We've got an entrepreneurial family. We always kind of like, oh yeah, one day we'll do that. And we're all waiting for our big idea. But of course, the big idea is a myth. And when Alex had a really unfortunate situation where her career was interrupted with a role that she had taken on, was really enjoying, but was finding that she was getting some feedback about who she was, and about how that didn't quite fit within the organization. So comments on her communication style, on the way that she dressed. So when her appraisal or probation period was up, they didn't extend or continue her employment. So Alex is a single mom raising 3 children. So to have her income stopped dead and have school runs. So there's a very limited job opportunity to somebody who's got to look after 3 children and take them to and from school. It needs to be within your area. You need to be able to get backwards and forwards. There's so many factors to consider, salary wise, etc., and then limited pool of jobs. At that point, it was significant for me. Looking at my sister, I'm like, gosh, what are we going to do? Because how are you in this situation? And how vulnerable are we? This is, how do we create some security? And so that became our launch pad. Let's not do this. Let's not you go through this again. It wasn't the first time that Alex had adverse experiences in employment due to communication, people not believing that her communication style was reasonable. So when we started up Send It to Alex, we actually created it as a first, the biggest priority was that it was a safe place for Alex to be herself, me to be myself, and be good at what we do, and that be the important thing, and that we gave each other flexibility to have our different communication styles. It wasn't until actually a little while into Send It to Alex that we realized that those communication styles actually had names, that they were significant differences in who we were and how we operated, and that being autism and ADHD. So Alex got a diagnosis went for an assessment and diagnosis of ADHD and autism. And I had an early diagnosis of dyslexia when I was 27. Actually, I went to university. That was after the second burnout I tried at university. And then later on, late into my 30s, an autism diagnosis. That changed everything for both of us, because we stopped trying to fix ourselves and started trying to understand why we operate the way that we do, and how we can build an environment, a workplace that actually allows us to be and have these differences, and also be professionals, and also be respectable, respect each other's way of working, that doesn't put us in these compromising situations that so many people find themselves in employment because of our communication style and their lack of understanding.
It's really interesting and really important to acknowledge that for a lot of people who are neurodiverse, the workplace, they don't fit into it, or it doesn't fit their style. It's this catch-22. And actually, that's why you find a lot of people who have ADHD, they're actually great entrepreneurs because they don't fit into the traditional workplace. And I love that the two of you found that out about each other, and in such an interesting way. So obviously the stakes were quite high. She's a single mom, she's got 3 children. And so you've got to really move on this. Tell me about what that was like, and describe what that was like. She needed to move, she needed to do something. And, what was that like? And what were some of the fears and the doubts that came in as you realized how important it is to get this off the ground, up and running?
So Alex and I couldn't be more different from each other in terms of our attitude to risk, our communication styles, the way that we operate, full stop. So when we first started, I started thinking about, what is our brand going to look like? What's our messaging? And whilst I'm thinking about these things, building out a business plan, Alex has already picked up her first client, reached out to her network. And for me, that was terrifying. I'm like, but we don't know what our offer is yet. We haven't solidified what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to do it and who our target market is. And her attitude was very different. I had the security of a full-time job, and she had to make money today to pay for her bills tomorrow. So we had, even us, everything about us, even down to our circumstances, was so significantly different. And so to be learning and kind of correcting or expanding my thinking to accommodate and understand, it's not the same for me, it does need to be different. But we started the business in 2019. So February 2020 is when we started the business. And when we started the business, COVID was already underway, and that we went into lockdown in March. So the first year was incredibly stressful, and how we both didn't burn out is absolutely beyond me, because her situation got even worse, because now she's completely dependent on the income that she generates and has got all of the responsibilities of a business. and has 3 children that are learning from home and all the complications that that brings. I've had my first baby at that point, and I've gone back to work. So I only had a 3-month maternity. I've now got a baby on my lap, working full-time from home and running a business in the evening. At the end of 2020, we were both furious at each other, and we were less accommodating than we actually had set out to be. So as we moved on into the business, we had to really call ourselves to account, especially me, because I become more and more abrupt in my communication. It's not intentional. I think I sound kind. I think that I mean well, and I think I sound kind, and therefore I am, as far as I'm concerned. But my sister has rejection sensitivity, and my tone can trigger her. Therefore, that can cause conflict. So navigating some of those really key differences that we both have, me being like, I don't do, being like, you need to fluff it up in order for me to be able to communicate with you, because I was causing her to shut down. So being able to navigate some of that and work through how we do it better. How is it possible? How do these two people that don't fit together in terms of an employment, if we're in an employment, it's like a situation. How do we create an inclusive environment so the way that I operate and the way that she operates, that we can find a way that means that we get to put our best skills forward? And in doing that, we, without realizing, shaped what Send It to Alex is today, which is an employment support service. We started out as a standard virtual assisting business, which provides kind of virtual assisting to business owners and neuro minority individuals in the workplace, with the support that we would have absolutely loved to have received during our employment to help overcome some of these barriers in the workplace, whether it's communication, organization. There's a whole sum of things that we have come to better understand ourselves, and then working with our client base have really kind of fleshed out and really created best practices to change the way that we work and operate in employment.
Wow. So would you say that was the biggest surprise to come out of this career interruption? Obviously, you started this business. You think it's going to be a VAEA sort of business for small businesses, but then it ends up being something completely different. What was that the biggest surprise, or was there another surprise?
I mean, that's a double whammy surprise, right? First of all, Alex and I go into this thinking that we're normal human beings, and that we've had some really unique experiences, and that we've had pulled the short straw. And in our own process of kind of self-discovery and understanding and having the space to kind of understand where those challenges are sitting and why that's happening, has then meant that all of a sudden, and I say this tongue in cheek, we're both autistic individuals, we're both neuro minorities, and have been our entire life, and yet all we know is pretending to or trying to be the ideal. So unraveling that and really understanding that, it's the personal journey of coming into a business as a normal person and then finding out that you're not, and then what does that mean? So that was surprise number one. And two, what followed from that was then sharing that with people, sharing how it needed to be different for us, and we were exploring that and doing that and attracting and finding that we weren't by ourselves, we weren't the only people having these unique experiences. Actually, we have a huge community of neurominority individuals who have had really hard times in employment. Statistics say it all. There's only 22% of autistic people in any type of paid work. That's 78% of autistic people not in any kind of paid work. That's more than any other disability. And then you have reports where up to 50% of managers feel uncomfortable employing somebody with ADHD. And that's down to misinformation, lack of understanding, not having the tools to be able to support that individual, which is crazy because actually, like you were saying, a lot of ADHD is a lot of neurodivergent or neurominority individuals fall out of employment and then run their own businesses, own very successful businesses. And given that space and flexibility in employment, imagine what we could be doing within employment as well. There's a lot of missed opportunities for the talent that is being either suppressed or lost, or however you want to look at that.
Well, I think it's really interesting, the conversation around autism in work as well, because I've taken on a new CMO role with an organization where a large majority of the people they employ are autistic. They work in the data science side of things, and it's like a superpower in that space. But it is challenging. We have an amazing guy who's worked for us for a decade, and he's always been looking for sort of second jobs to supplement his main job with us, because we can't give him full-time work, and he's had a nightmare of trying to find jobs. And he's really, really amazing what he does. He's incredibly talented, but because of the autism and Asperger's, other challenges, those have really impacted him. And it's as an employer, but also someone who is I've advocated for him for a decade. It's really hard to watch, because you see this person who's got all these amazing skills and talents and deserves an amazing job and deserves to have a good life, and he's on his own and he doesn't have that. So I see it firsthand, even within our team at TechPixies. I didn't know I had ADHD until I became an entrepreneur. And it was the same sort of thing. I'd been laid off from who knows how many jobs. And you sort of go, gosh, something must be wrong with me. And then suddenly, you're really good at entrepreneurship, or you really love entrepreneurship, and you realize, wait, hang on, maybe I was just in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. And so it's, I think we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who resonate with being, a neurodiverse, and it's really important that we address this need, because people are becoming more aware of it. And so, I think it's really amazing, the work that you're doing. So what is one of the greatest learnings that has come out of this whole experience for you?
One of the greatest learnings has come from the community and the work that we've done, is understanding that it can be different. It doesn't have to be the way that it is, and we can alter the way that we work to create more inclusive practice, and actually that brings better results. There's been several studies done on more inclusive workforces with more diverse teams that produce 30% more productivity, which impacts revenue, impacts profit margins. So knowing that actually with the right support and the right environments, that we can raise the success of organizations, and that we do bring value, and that we are worth it, not to be really gross about a different product. But that's been a significant learning. And so it takes us to our next chapter and send it to Alex. It's like, right, we've learned how we operate. We've learned how the best practices for us now. And we do that on a one-to-one basis with our clients, either as entrepreneurs or in employment or self-employed. How do we then take that step further and start helping organizations see the benefits of changing the way that they work, or flexing the way that they work, to allow more diversity and to get the benefits of that in the skill sets that we bring?
Yeah, and I think that's really an important point and great learning to take away, and the fact that now you can help larger companies and learn how to change their cultures to be more inclusive. I think that's really important. So is there a motto that you live by? I know we were thinking about that before. You said move forward was one of the things you said. You also said that things might feel really bad at the time that you're going through them, but they're worth going through. Is there any more clarity that's come to you since we talked about that last?
Yeah, there is. So move forward. I actually think that's a little bit dangerous now that I've had some reflection on that from 20 minutes ago. So I do think that moving forward is probably what I live by, but I think that I need to flesh out, put a bit of context around that. So we're often taught that, you need to be resilient. What doesn't kill you make you stronger. Well, actually, I think that that's garbage. And often what doesn't kill you usually cracks you. It creates holes in places that you can't reach, and it's damaging. And as you work through them or push past them, push forward, often they get neglected or forgotten about or left. And then you hit the next wall or the next thrashing, whatever your experiences are. which then make you more and more fragile. And that's what I found. I got to the point when in my mid-30s that my resilience seemed to be disappearing. I was getting older. I had all this knowledge. I'd like gotten through all of these hard times. And yet I felt more fragile than I'd ever been before. I was having panic attacks. I was losing my hair. I was extremely stressed. And yet I was seemingly stable in my life. I had a safe role, and my career was fine. My home was fine, but I was just far more responsive and stressed about different factors, and not leaning into, or like, look, basically what that meant is that I had to take stock, I had to take count. That's where my autism assessment and the reason I pursued and learned more about that. If we're operating differently and we're having these bad experiences, I think that we need to lean into those, and sometimes moving forward is taking steps back. And I think that I've had to take some significant steps back in my career, in my life, to better understand actually the damage that was done, how it's harmed me, and how I can make it better. And all of those steps back were significant steps forward. They were me moving forward. So I think just understanding that sometimes what looks like a step back is actually a huge step forward.
I love that. So sometimes you got to move back to move forward. And it's really important that we do that reflection piece. Well, I'd love for you to just, I know we've talked a lot about Send It to Alex, but maybe not necessarily the specifics. If someone would like to get involved, how can they get involved and where can they find you? What are you looking for right now? Who are you looking to connect with? Because they might be listening and we want to make sure that they reach out to you.
So Send It to Alex, we're an employment support service. We provide one-to-one support for neurominority individuals and disabled people with disabilities to overcome workplace barriers. And we help people to identify their support needs and to access support, whether that might be communicating it to their employer or seeking out perhaps access to work funding. We also provide training and consultancy to employers on how to be more inclusive and support strategies for supporting neurominority individuals. So if any of those are of interest to you, please do give me a call or hit me up on any one of our LinkedIn, Instagram, or our website. And also collaborations. We're always looking to collaborate with people. Any great ideas, please do bring them to us.
Brilliant. And we will make sure that we have all of that information linked in the show notes. And of course, Lillie and I have talked a lot about how TechPixie graduates from our social media management certification program are really a great fit for the services that they offer and the support that they provide. So of course, if you are a social media management certification graduate and you are looking for some work in the VAEA field, it's definitely an opportunity, and we'd love to point you Lillie's way. So thank you everyone for listening, and a particular thanks to Lillie for coming and sharing her story and Alex's story. Really important that we hear what it's like in the workplace for people from all different backgrounds, and how incredible it is that someone can take their learnings from that and turn that into a solution. I always say the best businesses are businesses that solve a problem, and you've got a real problem that you're really solving, and it's an amazing gift that you're giving to the world. And I'm so glad that you've been able to do that. So Lillie, thanks for coming on the show. And for those of you who are watching or listening, I want to just appreciate you and your time and the energy you've given us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week at the same day, same time, wherever you like to listen to us or watch us online. Bye for now.